place where ghosts, cryptids, and extraterrestrials are sought. This is where you'll find answers to questions about what lurks in the dark. This is Periscope Uncensored.
Hey everyone, welcome to Periscope Uncensored on the LNM radio network. My name is Jax, and Clarissa is under the weather tonight, so Chris Carr will be joining us.
Good evening.
How you doing, Chris?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Glad to be here. Sorry to hear Clarissa's not feeling well. I believe she has an ear infection from Hades or something to that effect.
Yeah, I'm actually catching a cold myself.
It's been going around. I'm just getting over something. And now it's fun because when I go to work, I hear my coworkers coughing, and it's like, haha, yeah, I did that.
Yeah. Of course, me being up till 3:30 this morning doesn't help either, so I ain't going to work.
Yikes. So we were up pretty late last night as well, doing Hidden World, or the other show that Clarissa does with me. We had Corvus Nocturnum on and Kevin Eads talking about Krampus. That was pretty fun.
Cool.
You know, Krampus night is Wednesday.
Is it really?
It really is. Krampus Nacht, a German variation of night, occurs this Wednesday. So all you listeners that are into Krampus, get out to your parades in your town and get your gear on. It's going to be good. It's going to be a hoot. So what's going on with you, Joe? Working a lot?
Yeah. It's all work and no pay.
All work and no pay. It's Jack, a very angry boy.
Yeah, it's where I work. They don't give raises. So I've been there 10 years.
Welcome to the economy, right?
Right.
Hopefully that turns around.
I'm hoping.
A lot of people are saying that. You know, it's like there aren't a lot of, raises going on, really. You know, people have jobs, but they're not really progressing in them real quick. That's the word on the street anyways.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm feeling, actually, tell you the truth. But, it's time will tell. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be there for because, like I said, it's been over 10 years, actually. Be 11 years in July, and I'm making what an 18-year-old would be making fresh out of high school. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's not right.
But it's a job. It's local. I can walk to work.
That's always nice. I'm starting to feel a little of that myself. I finally up and moved close to my day job, and I tell you, life is a lot easier. My commute was an hour and a half to 2 hours each way prior, so now I'm 15 minutes away, and it's like such a relief.
Yeah.
So that's good. What's going on in the paranormal world?
You know what's the most this is what's going on. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've noticed it all over the place. You got people, like especially like on YouTube and whatnot. You still have a lot of people, and not even on YouTube, but you also have people just like going to places without permission. You got people just you have people I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, guys.
Making some some laws with trespassing and that kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Going
You
rogue
know,
out there?
yeah. You see a lot of people going to like abandoned places, and they just waltz in and they start, filming and what. It's like it's taken a back. It's taken the field backwards like 15 steps, so to speak.
Well, you know what I think with that is that it's always been there, and I think teenagers um, do things of that nature often and always have. But now with the technology we have, it's getting recorded and put out more. So it, which is bad because now there's evidence that people were in these places that nobody was thinking of. Right,
Yeah.
so it brings attention to it, and the owners and the local authority can go and watch them, and it doesn't help. You're correct. I agree.
And the real investigators, we have to sit there and work them back. It's almost like we stop moving forward a few steps, and then all of a sudden we have to make up ground because of these other individuals that are doing things the wrong way, so to speak.
I'm wondering what the next breakthrough in paranormal technology is going to be.
And it gets aggravating. But
we've got our trusty EVPs with us. What do you think's the next big thing coming? We have a real interesting guest tonight. Maybe you want to tell us a little about that. He seems to be on some cutting edge of technology and theories that may play right into that question I just asked.
Yeah. Well, it's as you know, technology is coming out new stuff all the time. So it's like we have to be on our toes to learn that technology so we can be up to date with everything that we do.
Do you think there's stuff coming out that, is truly original and new? Like, what have you seen that you like?
Well, as you know, we get that new ghost box that we got, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You've seen that new ghost box that we got?
Yeah,
and for the listeners that don't know, Chris is part of my team of ECCPI.
Correct.
Look,
East Coast Coalition of Paranormal Investigators.
Yes. As many times as we use that, we've never got a hit on that.
Yeah, but there is something interesting about that box. It has a shield in it, and I forget what the name of the shield is. Faraday. It's got a Faraday shield. Like they sell Faraday bags to put over ghost boxes. Spirit boxes, so your Hack Shack or your whatever you're using.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody gets EVPs with them. They work too well, or not necessarily EVPs, but they don't get sound bites. Basically, the Faraday pouch or bag blocks, radio waves and electromagnetic interference, so that you're getting a pure response from that spirit box. And that one that we just got, which is really cool. Like I love the functionality of it, but I was reading something about it where it has a built-in Faraday like shield type thing in it. And I think if we get anything from it, you pretty much can guarantee it to be something of a spiritual nature, because Correct. It's not going to pick up radio frequencies. It's not going to do those things. Yes. Now that, interestingly enough, may go with or against our guest theory, the S.E.R.M theory, and that's Ben, right? That we have coming on tonight.
Yes, Mr. Ben Robison. That is correct.
He's from Oregon Paranormal.
Yes. No.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not real familiar with Ben. I do know a little bit about his theory. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about him.
Okay.
I know he talks about things like radio waves and light waves, and radio waves are part of the electromagnetic spectrum, and it's thought, and him. I think he expounds upon this pretty clearly. But I've read other theories where people do talk about spiritual presence being in different light waves than we normally see. That's why we have some of the special cameras that we use that detect infrared light, which is it's all really part of one wave band, one spectrum.
Yes. Ben Robison, ASEP.
That spectrum includes things like X-rays, gamma rays, radio waves, regular light waves, all actually part of the same kind of energy, which is interesting. Energy seems to be neither created nor destroyed, just seems to change forms. And perhaps that's where our gateway to communication lie, getting in the right spectrum, getting in the right frequency.
Yes, Ben Robison is a co-host and producer of ASCP Radio, founder researcher at, I'm going to hack this, Animosis, studies of enigmatic and paranormal.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's he's excuse me.
Oh, okay. I see this. Autonomous Studies of the Enigmatic and Paranormal, this Ben's group from Vancouver, Washington.
Yes.
Fantastic. That's cool. I've been through Vancouver. I went through Vancouver on business. Beautiful country out there. Across the Canada line. It's quite nice. It's one of those places where you can go skiing or go to the beach in the same day.
I have never been to Canada. I have family in Canada.
Weed's legal.
But
of course, it is in our state too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also your gateway to ghosts. Get on the weed frequency. I think that comes in around 420 megahertz, something like that. Yeah.
Oh boy.
I occasionally dial that right in. On occasion. On occasion. Moderation in all things, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting show. And it's going to be fun.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. I know we can't talk much about this, but Dave had mentioned a potential case in Salem. You get any news or anything we can talk about on that?
I haven't heard any more about that.
That being Salem, Massachusetts, right? Not Salem, New Hampshire?
It's Salem, Mass.
Salem?
Yes. Yeah. All I know is that the client asked us to hold off a bit because things are crazy.
In what way? In his personal life or in his
I
ghostly life.
I assume it was because of the holidays.
Yeah, you know, this is the time of year everyone's busy, right?
Right.
Thanksgiving to Christmas.
So I'm thinking probably maybe after the first three, like a March, April. That's what I'm guessing.
Cool, cool.
But I'd like to get something together before then, if possible.
Is there anything about the activity that's going on in the house you can talk about
Um,
without giving any personal details?
there really has been full-bodied apparitions, hearing voices, footsteps.
Full body apparitions seem to be making a comeback. I swear to God. It just seems like we're hearing more and more about these full bodied apparitions. I thought they were rare, but it seems like a lot of people are seeing the damn things.
And I was going, and speaking of full-bodied apparitions, we had you weren't there with us, but we had a case in Maine.
Hmm. Yes.
And the one file that I wanted the most, actually the two files that I wanted the most, which I just recently discovered, on the SLS camera, when one of our female investigators was sitting in the chair in the living room, that whole video is corrupted.
Oh, no kidding. The one where he's like above her and
Sitting
he
on top of her.
sitting on top of her, being
Yes.
a little impish, right?
Yes.
Seeming
Is
to stroke
only
his stick, I guess.
that is the only file that cannot be played.
Really?
There's nothing there.
Wow.
The only one. And of course, my experience, what I had when, you know, getting the infamous lap dance, that was
Right?
never recorded because of she didn't know how to hit the record button. She wasn't there
Oops.
when we gave classes on how to do it. So yeah, that's probably my fault. But it's okay. Process, right?
Maybe a good idea would be make a short video,
Yeah.
and share that with the team.
Yeah, that's already in the process of doing. But
Your guide to SLS.
yeah,
Well, that would work.
I mean, I just couldn't believe that file was corrupted, and it actually says it. It's like it's missing part of whatever it is that makes it a video. Now, I guess that there's supposed to be something online that you can put files into and it recovers it.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Might be worth a shot. What does it save to? Like an MP4?
It's supposed to be an MP4, yes.
So maybe there's something wrong with the compression scheme to make it the MP4, and one of those file repair programs maybe helps that.
Well, from what I understand, that the gibberish or the link or whatever it is that's generated from, I guess it's more like a code. It's missing, and that's what makes it corrupted.
Gotcha. Well, see what's out there. If you can bring it back, it sure sounded interesting. I would have liked to have seen it.
So would I. The only file that I wish that was there is not there.
The
Everything
stick
else
figure
is
taking
there.
out a stick.
Yeah.
Kind of makes you feel like you need a sort of paranormal umbrella for that kind of thing. Whereas it was actually above our investigator. So
But
yeah,
I mean that one of the major claims that investigation was that women were getting sexually assaulted.
right. And it looked like that was happening.
Right.
Sounds like she needed to jump into like a Faraday bag herself. Get the ghost off. Or not get the ghost off, but yeah, you know what I mean. Something like that. Boo. Hmm.
But yeah, that's the only file. I mean, everything before that we recorded because I still have the stuff from the S.K. Pierce Mansion second revisit,
Fantastic.
including
What a beautiful place.
it was, it was. And the thing is, you know what's even more special about that place? Because remember the first time before I played Superman, I caught the children, but it wasn't recorded.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when that was occurring.
The second time around we were there, I actually caught them again in the same location on the stairwell, on the inside of the stairwell, coming down from the second to the third floor. They were there again, and this time I have it recorded.
No kidding. No
Yep.
kidding. What did you see? Do you get with the SLS you mean? You're seeing the
Yes. Yep.
stick figures?
Yes.
And when you say Superman, for the listeners, um, there's an expression in Massachusetts. I don't know if it is in the rest of the world. It's called taking a digger. That's kind of what happened there. He kind of like flew off the stairs, kind of rather unexpectedly.
Yes. One flew over the cuckoo's nest. That was me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah. Sometimes when it's really, really super cold out, my lower back still hurts a little bit. But other than that,
Oh, I bet. I bet. You can hear that bang down the street with a force.
I'm surprised I didn't break my back because I actually looked at that molding at the bottom where my lower back hit, and it was sticking out about an inch or more.
Wow.
So I am really, really surprised I didn't break my back. But it's all good. I
Glad you
didn't.
didn't. That would have been a bummer, to say the least. It was bad enough. And I was like, wow, are you okay? S.K. Pierce is definitely an interesting place.
Mm-hmm. And a week later, I had a bruise on my arm
Mm-hmm.
in the shape of a hand. Like it grabbed my forearm.
Really?
And that happened. I got the bruise about a week later.
Wow.
And then inside that bruise, it appears like I have a child bite mark.
Really?
Yeah.
And this all showed up like a week after.
A week after.
You don't feel there was anything else that could have caused that? Anything going on at work or any children bite you?
No children bit me.
No children bit you that week.
But I'm going to send those pictures off. I told Clarissa a couple weeks ago that I sent them to her. I've just been like so busy. But yeah. I know.
No, it is that time of year. This is like the slide from Thanksgiving to New Year's,
Yeah.
Especially Christmas and whatever holidays you celebrate. You're racing to get so much done. And then it happens, and in a blink, all that time, energy, and money is all just, part of the past.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do it all again the next year. It is fun, though. Not gonna lie. Have you done any Christmas shopping?
You know what? I haven't even started yet.
Yeah, I haven't either. The moving and everything. Like, I love to take advantage of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and I guess now we have Small Business Saturday and silly ass Sunday or something. I try to take advantage of all those things, and struck out because I moved on Black Friday. It's just a lot of chaos, so a lot of money
And
too.
how
No lie, it's not cheap to do.
and how was the weather? How cold was it when you moved?
Uh it was freezing. That was a cold week. I think Thanksgiving was actually colder, but it was cold on that Friday. You know, I was mostly packing. I didn't do a whole lot with that holiday, but we get it done.
Yeah,
We're happy. Yeah, my son started school
good.
today, so
Did he?
yeah, he's jazzed. He likes his new school, and um, all is well in the world.
No.
That's all I got. It's not too paranormal, but it's not terrible either.
Yeah.
So I think we're getting ready for an ad break.
Yes, we're getting ready to take our bottom of the hour break. When we come back, we'll have Mr. Ben Robinson on the line with us.
Awesome. Excuse me.
Stay
Sounds
tuned.
great.
Hey everyone, Jack's here. Welcome back to Periscope Uncensored here on the LNM Radio Network. Clarissa is feeling a little under the weather. Joining me tonight is my co-host for the night, Mr. Chris Carr.
Hey, how's it going, Jax?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. And on the line with us, we have Mr. Ben Robinson. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. So this CERN hypothesis. Why don't you tell us a little about what that is and how you came up with it?
Okay. I guess what I'll do is I'll start a little bit with a little bit of background on myself. My name is actually Ben Robison, and I have been kind of off and on throughout my life involved in the paranormal of some sort. When I say involved, I mean like as a kid growing up, we checked out local haunts that were supposed to be famous for activity and things like that, or just we would peruse the cemetery grave sites and check out those kind of things. And then as I grew up, I had experiences with what I believed to be the paranormal. At any rate, it wasn't until, just like a lot of people, the onslaught of the TV shows came around. And about 2007, I decided I wanted to form my own nonprofit. And so I worked for about a year with my my co-founder to start the paranormal and occult research team. And by about 2008, we took on our first case. And during this time, I wanted to learn as much as I could about everything. I was kind of like a sponge, and I was very technical with my job. I've been a network engineer for years, and I was in the telecom field at the time.
No
So I
kidding.
kind of, yeah. So I
Sorry to
I kind of,
interrupt you. I'm in that same field, so
oh, nice. Yeah. I, have a long running history with telecom, and at that time I was using a lot of what I knew knowledge wise to kind of brainstorm and spitball what I thought was a potential side effect, or just the inability that we had when trying to communicate with spirits. So I started piecing together things and researching on my own. And it dawned on me, that I should probably put together something about what I was researching. And that's kind of where, and, this was probably 2011, I think, when I finally put together what I call the S.E.R.M hypothesis. And essentially, as you'll get to know me in general, I usually make everything a mouthful. And so I always try to make sure I abbreviate things and get an acronym in there. So I came up with the S.E.R.M hypothesis and called it the spectral emotion to radio frequency manifestation. Essentially, I knew that there was no easy way to title what I was doing, so I had to make sure it had some kind of acronym to make it easier for people, and that's how I came up with the S.E.R.M hypothesis. That's kind of how I came about it. As far as what it is, essentially, there are lots of pieces to it. For example, there's lots of different energies that we study in this field, and one of the fields that we're specifically looking at with regards to the S.E.R.M hypothesis is the electrical and magnetic fields, or the frequencies that we're measuring. Now, I for lack of boring you with just the details to my thought process in attacking just these two, essentially it doesn't negate that other fields or other energies might come into play, but I wanted to make sure that what we work with regards to equipment and what we're looking at from a technical aspect with regards to the phenomena or the anomalies that we're capturing, I wanted to be able to try to focus on those things.
So I think you talk a little bit about radio waves and maybe different or unusual radio waves that you're capturing data in.
Well, ultimately, what it boils down to is we're looking at a very limited, and you probably understand this from a technical aspect with your background as well, that every piece of device has a frequency response range, and that limits that device. With the S.E.R.M hypothesis, I kind of proposed an idea of trying to cover the gamut of frequencies out there. So there are uncommon, I think is what you were referring to, uncommon frequency ranges that are, potentially being used by spirits out there.
Right. I mean, it's all part of the electromagnetic spectrum. So, that goes beyond even radio.
Right. Exactly.
And, goes into the idea of full spectrum cameras and things of that nature.
Correct. Yeah. Now, with regards to, say, even full spectrum, it actually, from my research, have discovered that the full spectrum cameras that we're buying or being sold are actually just a wide spectrum. They're not even covering the full spectrum of that. And some of the guys will even send you the specs from the manufacturer for that supposed wide or full spectrum, and you'll see that actually it doesn't really fit the full spectrum of visibility. and in turn, it's really a wide spectrum camera. But what I'd like to see is equipment put together, okay, to try to marry different technologies so that we can measure the changes in the emotional response. Now, that emotional response can be driven from our line of questioning. You know, it could be us imposing or projecting our thoughts and feelings on a situation as well, if that makes sense to you.
Well, sure. It sounds like you're talking about the kind of thing where when you have freeze water and you hate that water and you tell that water you hate it, it makes kind of angry ice crystals. You know, and if you play nice music to it, it makes pretty ice crystals. And this is a fact, right? I haven't seen a great explanation for that. But is that kind of what you're talking about? When you say emotional response?
Yeah, I mean, everything, even living and what I believe to be the deceased, the survival of that bodily, death, the conscious, that is, that energy, I think, is still emotionally driven, just like we are in a living form. I don't necessarily think that every how would I put it? Not everything responds the same way. You know what I'm saying? For example, plants, animals, humans, and other different animals and creatures out there have different responses to their environment and to be measured. With the S.E.R.M hypothesis, it's trying to open up the window all the way around to allow more in. For example, you take a digital audio recorder and you're holding an EVP session and you're asking certain questions like, do you have messages for, anybody, alive still, or do you know that you're dead, or things like that. You can elicit an emotional response from the supposed entity or ghost, right? Well,
right, like provoking, or maybe
but you can
just
even do it
speaking
inadvertently.
to something personal to that entity
Right.
as well, right?
Right, exactly. When we're doing that, we're working with a limited device. That frequency response range for a digital audio recorder per se has a limitation. So it has a bottom end and a top end of a frequency response range. And I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
Sure.
I think it's like 20 kilohertz to 20 megahertz or something along those lines.
The microphones are rated, the speaker playback is rated,
right,
in all speakers, right? And it's only going to cover a certain frequency band. If you buy any set of headphones, they're going to give you a frequency band.
Exactly.
Yep.
So with that, when you're asking your questions, and let's say in theory that this spirit that you're talking to gets emotional in their response to you, it's very plausible that when they change their emotion, that they change frequency at the same time. We know that the human bodies have a frequency, and it depends on your age, your mood, your health, environment, things like that, and that can affect your overall frequency, and that can be measured. But when we're working with a device that can go from, a certain frequency to another certain frequency, and then we're asking a spirit to have a response to a very emotionally driven question, there's a potential there that they change out of the bandwidth of that device, that ability, that range, the spectrum that it can capture its recording on. and moves into another area. And that's why I think it would be beneficial if we were to take pieces of equipment and marry them together and have it set up so that way a computer drives it to, say, for example, EMF spikes were to take place. That would trigger a data logger to start logging when the spikes happened, and a date and time stamp is essentially what I mean on a data logger. And then let's say another
like meter does that.
Yeah, and you could fit in different types of devices with this thing, and they all communicate to each other. But in turn, they're opening up that window or widening that window to a width a lot bigger than what we're used to getting. And therefore, because if you ever think about it, when we do these EVP sessions, you're getting snippets essentially of what you've asked. If you say, how did you die, right? And you get just a one-word response, that's not necessarily maybe what was all said. It might just be what that device was able to capture because that spirit at that time was communicating on the frequency that device can actually capture in. And it could have been a fragment of a full sentence. It could have been a fragment of just a phrase, a statement of sorts. And so having a bigger window, again, would be optimal for us in our efforts to try to communicate with the dead.
Right, I hear what you're saying. You're saying that maybe the phrase sentence communications covered more spectrums than the device is able to record.
Correct. Yeah. And you
it's
could
funny,
put together.
A lot of people talk about raising their frequency, and I always wonder what the hell do they mean by this, right? Right. Maybe it plays into this a little bit. I'm not sure. Are you familiar with the idea of a natural frequency and musical tunings and things like that? Or like we tune our music to A440, and but that's not a natural tuning.
Correct,
right? It's supposed to be somewhere like 430 or 427, something to that nature.
Okay. Yeah. I've heard about that, and in this particular case, I don't think that would be because that's, as I understand it, that's more when you modulate something, whereas I'm talking about just the frequency in general that these entities are coming in through, especially when we examine our audio files. You can actually use software that shows the frequency that those anomalies sit at,
I kind of mentioned that because that other frequency that we don't tune to by default with our electronics, with our instruments and music and all of that, is supposedly, and I don't know a lot about this, but I was a musician in a past life, so it interests me, a more natural frequency. So that's why I said that, because I have to wonder if that plays into what you're saying in some way. If it is truly a more natural frequency, if it's the frequency of the world, the way the world vibrates,
right,
on a natural level when plants grow and things like that, it would make sense to me that maybe spirit communications are in some part maybe based on that.
Yeah, correct. And you actually remind me of something. I remember it was an old episode. It might have actually been their very first episode of In Search Of. And they talk about how they play music, different types of music for plants, and some thrive and some don't. And that's obviously another form of frequency output. Is
right, similar to the water crystals, right?
Exactly, right.
They play angry music and the plant doesn't do well. They play classical and it, blossoms in fruits or whatever. And you are talking about the Leonard Nimoy
Yes.
In Search of, right? Yeah, thank you. All
correct.
right.
Yeah,
There is a new one now.
I know.
Um,
Yeah, and I haven't checked it out, so I can't really say anything about it.
Yeah,
But
I can't comment on it either way. I think it's great that it's coming back, though. I loved In Search of when I was growing up.
yeah, I loved it very much. So it was very influential. It's kind of a part of my, genesis, if you will, of getting interest in this field. It just fueled my curiosity and everything every time I saw those shows. But what I liked about those shows too is they explored all realms of the paranormal, and they looked at it from different aspects, from psychic, mediums to the technical. It may have been even that same episode that I'm remembering, or I'm meshing it all together. Either way, it was In Search of, where they showed people using FLIR cameras or thermal imaging cameras back in the 70s. And they were color camera, thermal imaging cameras, and they were using them for paranormal research. But we didn't hear about it until the TV shows really made it popular again in the post 2000s. The technology has always been something that's fascinated me as well, even as a child. And that was something that helped, kind of form me into who I am now, where I look at things from a technical aspect.
Sure. They put a lot of science out in that show as well.
Yes.
Matched it up as best they could.
Right.
Huh.
Did you guys have any other questions regarding how the theory works?
Okay. Does it?
Well, but what you found, like, have you found that certain frequencies are more active than others? Or?
Well, it takes time to gather and catalog all of this information. As far as it working, it's a hypothesis. So the next step for it to be is actually put into theory, which I'm trying to do and work with other teams to put it in action, if you will. But the problem really also with my hypothesis, there's always strengths and weaknesses to everything. And in this case, one of the ones that I feel like works against me a tad bit would be that the fact that the technology isn't there. We don't have engineers for the paranormal that are really designing equipment that are marrying technologies together, per se. You're getting a lot of stuff out there that is really pimped out on the TV shows, and there's a nice big fat number next to it, but you don't see any collaboration going on with engineers to actually design equipment. There's a lot of apps and things like that out there.
Yeah, apps have kind of grown because everybody has, a Kindle or an iPad or something like that. Or at least they can do it on their phone. Everybody's got a phone, right? So naturally, the apps is in a kind of an easy market. I don't know that it's the best one. I don't know what the limitations of what the phone can measure. Speaking of devices, no matter what app you put on it.
Yeah. Well, the way I look at it is, if it wasn't really designed, to be a paranormal instrument, the phone, that is, the smartphone per se, I don't know how much I trust somebody sitting there designing a piece of software on sensors and whatnot inside of a phone to do what we're looking for, as far as
exactly. I totally agree. The phone isn't designed to be a paranormal tool, folks. It just isn't.
No, not really.
You know, they're making do with what's there, and it was never intended for those uses.
Right. And so, kind of going back to what I thought I heard Jax ask in regards to, if the theory or the hypothesis itself works, it's a kind of a work in progress. It's one of those things where we're still collecting data. We're still trying to catalog to see if, in fact, what we believe the energy of a deceased individual is communicating to us over frequencies, and then that they're actually changing frequencies. But like I said, the problem is getting the gear put together and designed so that way we can keep opening that window wider and wider and wider. That's where the biggest challenge lies right now.
Are you finding there's things you can replicate over and over that would take the hypothesis to more of a theory?
I'm pretty critical of everything that comes across, my computer and what I'm looking at and perceptually trying to, understand. So I don't feel like so far I've had enough information to be able to push it forward. And then not only that, I really still feel pretty strongly that the equipment end of it, some form, whether it's in a more beta version or not, form, needs to be there for us to be able to use. So I've been playing around with Arduino boards. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
I've heard the term.
Okay.
But we're getting ready to take a commercial. We have to do it on a half hour. If you don't mind, stay with us, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that and some of the other tools you're using.
Okay, sounds good.
Welcome, everybody, back to Periscope Uncensored. My name is Jax, and joining me tonight is Chris Carr.
Hey, Jax. I'm filling in for Clarissa, who is sick tonight.
Yes, hopefully she feels better.
Yeah. We have a fabulous guest with us.
Yes, Mr. Ben Robison. Welcome back, Ben.
Thank you very much.
So what? Okay, so one question that I have is: are you like subletting out to other teams to help with this hypothesis?
Well, I work with several different groups. I have worked with Oregon Paranormal. I've worked with Paranormal Research and Investigations, which I should back up. Casey Goodwin of Oregon Paranormal is who I've specifically worked with. Michael White of Paranormal Research and Investigations. I've worked with Neil McNeil of Paranormal Studies, and actually Jay Verberg as well of Oregon Paranormal. So forgive me for that. But I've had other individuals that are also kind of per se consultants work with me and help me when I've tried to test this out. But again, there just needs to be more research done and developing further of the hypothesis. And then most importantly, to get equipment that actually can start helping us test this idea out.
What are the roadblocks you're hitting with the equipment? Like, I find this interesting. I know to take pictures in certain light spectrums and like gamma and stuff like that, you need lenses and telescopes that are like as big as your house.
Right.
You know, on the other end, when you get into like the radio waves and the lower frequencies, are you coming across or developing any kind of electronics that are picking up more of the electromagnetic spectrum than what is commonly available now?
Well, not really, to be honest with you. I haven't seen much in that regard, that there's any particular one that has more than the other. Um, it's it's very spotty, as you know. Especially when you look at it from the most popular um, device used out there, the digital audio recorders. They're very spotty as far as giving us full, complete answers. That has happened, but it's not uh, a commonplace thing to have happen from what we see. But the equipment, challenges are really trying to get the engineering, because I'm not an electrical engineer by any means, nor do I try to sell myself as one. I work on networks, but um, with the trying to design.
Right. You mentioned you were in telecom, which I am as well.
Yeah,
So I thought that was interesting because we're kind of a rare breed, which is
yeah,
great for job security.
it is very much so. But trying to get this stuff designed has been kind of an arduous task, and that's nobody seems to really be interested in doing it. So I've been trying to do it on my own and trying to learn that and and then fit it in with my, free time. Makes it kind of a slow process. And so it would be nice if there was a
Right.
lot more exciting information to share, saying, yeah, we're capturing all sorts of stuff, but it's just not far enough along at this point to be anything but a hypothesis.
Mm. Well, I think it's a good one. I mean, it's just something that's interested me from other readings and just curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
From a science perspective, myself, that we have this light spectrum, this electromagnetic spectrum, and that it encompasses so many things. And people don't often think about that the light in their room is really similar to radio waves and to X-rays, and your microwave operates on a different frequency, but it's essentially the same energy.
Right.
Right. So if theoretically we had a way to measure all of that, and you're doing something like an EVP session, like, what kind of response could you potentially get? If you could measure all those frequencies, if you could cover the whole band.
Exactly.
It's like we cover bits and parts of the band based on equipment that is out there for other reasons. Cameras, you're taking out, filters off the camera. So now we got a little bit more of the light spectrum than we had. And you're right, full spectrum it's kind of a devious term, right? It's just like a little bit more spectrum.
Right, exactly.
Would be a better name for those cameras. And things of that nature. EMF.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you look back to
great
historically,
if we could just package like one kind of device to cover all of it, right?
Well, and that's what my hopes are, is that we can. But if you even look back historically at just the technical aspect, the equipment we're using, it has evolved, meaning it's changed. It's gotten to a point where people are looking at it like, okay, well, what money can this make me, instead of what can I do to further this field forward in a positive light? And unfortunately, we're seeing more gimmicky stuff come out, and I look at everything so critically, that I don't just jump on the bandwagon anymore. I've bitten that bait before, like anybody, and I've bought my fair share of equipment that in the long run, I was like, yeah, that was a waste of my money. And then since then, I try to look at the way that the equipment's designed and study it. And then when you get it, one of the first things you should ever do is field test it. Now, with the hypothesis that I have, that would be trying to bring those several pieces of equipment together, get them fused in a fashion that they are working, and then test them again. Because you're altering things, in a beta form like that. And so there would be a lot of, kinks to work out and things to seam up and shore up with the software, interfacing them physically and all that kind of stuff. But there isn't really any particular piece of equipment that I feel like, well, there are some, I guess I was going to say
Sorry, Ben, you're breaking up a little bit. I'm not sure if it's your internet connection or mine.
I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. I don't know if there's an issue with my connection or not. Essentially all I'm trying to say is, there are lots of pieces of equipment I would put together in a beta form to try to work with for the S.E.R.M hypothesis.
Okay, such as like what pieces, like what are you like planning on putting together?
Well, you could take, like, say, an EMF meter, and if I were to use an EMF meter, I would use a tri-field, a triple axis meter that has multiple axes on it, or antennas on it, that measures both the bipoles in planet Earth. So I would use that, but I would also make sure that it had data logging features. And then I'd mesh that together with say a data logger, the kind that actually measure, your temperature and humidity and things like that. I'd marry that together with an EMF meter, and then I'd bring in a camera, and I'd bring in a video camera. And so each one of them have their own frequency response range, and you would be able to, say, have a master computer control them. And when an EMF spike happened, it would trigger the EMF meter to log that or to be running, and then maybe follow it. And if it hopped over to a frequency that the camera could capture in the audible fields, or not the audible fields, the visual fields, then you would be able to take photos that way, and capture it. And you'd be following that anomaly, that piece, that whether it's from generated from an EVP all the way up to an apparition, if you will.
Wow. That's pretty interesting. So you've been working on this hypothesis for how long now again?
I would say roughly 7 or 8 years, when I actually started putting it on paper. I probably messed with it, I don't know, several months prior to that, and played around with the idea, but didn't really make anything happen until about 2011, I think.
And how soon do you think that you could start piecing stuff together and actually field testing it?
Well, I'm working on that as we speak. I'm trying to, get pieces together. Like I was talking about earlier, I use an Arduino board, and I'm working on how to design that so that way it'll interface with multiple devices. But you also have to kind of create some of your own devices. Like you have to create an EMF meter that's going to be able to interface with it. And those are things I have never done before. And so there's a big, big, big learning curve. And that's why, I haven't been able to get farther along with it to turn it into a theory.
Okay. know that I'm not able to see the chat here, so I can't get any questions for some reason. Okay. So when this takes effect, this could be possibly huge for the field then, obviously.
I would think so, and only for the fact of that it would be giving us more information from the the ether, essentially. We would be getting better answers, I believe. We'd be capturing better evidence that would support the survival of consciousness after bodily death, and it would make things make more sense to us. I think I would answer a lot of questions that we have right now that are not able to be answered with the equipment that we're using or being sold.
Great. Yeah, so
Can I chime in for a second?
yeah. Sure.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, Clarissa, how you doing?
I am so sick, but
I'm sorry to hear that.
no, it's okay. But I had to chime in for a second. One of the things that you and I have talked about in the past, and I am so sorry that I haven't been able to participate in the interview tonight. But I want to thank Jax and Chris for holding down the fort in my stead. But one of the things that you and I have talked about in the past, Ben, is your documentary that you've been working on, the Permanence, a Paranormal Case Study. Now, within that documentary, are you going to start applying some of the S.E.R.M hypothesis aspects and theories and maybe start testing some of this within that documentary?
I would like to see that. It's not that it hasn't been a thought. We haven't really discussed it as a group per se. We've mostly been focusing on getting a lot of our interviews done and a lot of the B-roll kind of type of stuff. We're now going to be diving into more of the investigational process of the Old Wheeler Hotel. And who knows, there might be something that we bring into it. The only reason why I'm hesitant a little bit about bringing it in the documentary is we're not far enough along with the hypothesis. And I mean that more like I've been kind of reiterating through the show, is that the equipment is not there. We haven't been able to design or find people that want to design it, help us design it, and use it, for this potential. It'd be nice though if we were to get it to a place in time that it could be used in the documentary. And I appreciate you bringing up the documentary, because that is a piece that's one of the focus points of my life right now is this documentary, and my role in it being more of a technical advisor and also designing some of these different hypotheses and theories. I want to make sure that we have an open mind and consider all these other things with regards to the technology that we employ.
Well, and I have one more follow-up question before and I'll ask my one question, and then I'm going to bow back out and turn things back over to my boys. But the equipment that you've been talking about, which I think is fabulous, and I agree it is needed. You and I think along the same lines and on a lot of stuff. But are you familiar with the paranormal puck which was developed by Billy Chappell about 10 years ago. Didn't really take off. But are you familiar with that one at all?
Yeah, if I remember right, I think the puck turned into the Ovilus.
It ultimately turned into the Ovilus, but it was initially a device kind of like RT-EVP meets EMF meter meets data logger, all
Right.
wrapped into one. Do you think that perhaps that technology could be, incorporated, to get you one step further, to what you're trying to accomplish with the S.E.R.M hypothesis?
I am open to all ideas, but I'm not honest. If I'm honest with you, with regards to that particular product and the individual that
Mm-hmm.
that designs them, I'm not a fan, and it's really boils down to the fact that everything's kept under lock and key.
Right.
Won't explain how he does it, and when you patent things, you become it. It gets documented and whatnot, and I find that a lot of what he does is not really following that kind of path. It's definitely designed for entertainment purposes. Matter of fact, he used to. I don't think he does anymore. I don't really keep tabs on him, but I believe I know at one point when I was considering some of his products several years ago, that you had to sign several different waivers to say that you recognize that his equipment was only for entertainment purposes only. So I want to work with people who are really trying to design things, have the know-how that want to push the field forward and not just make money off of it. You know what I'm saying? That's the hardest part. Everybody wants to make money, and I don't blame people for wanting money. That's not where my biggest concern is. It's that becomes the driving force, and it's fame and fortune that they're seeking, and I want to work with individuals that are
Conversely,
just
it's considered pseudoscience by a lot of people that would have the know-how.
Right.
It's dismissed too easily.
Mm-hmm.
So the niche, gets taken advantage of by the hawks, if you will.
Right. And thanks for the questions, Clarissa. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Clarissa. You sound like we, pulled the medical tent screen aside and.
Ben, it's actually pretty hard for people
life.
To find people that actually design and make the equipment purchased by the general public, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And there are some really nice people out there. We have some locally here in the Pacific Northwest that design equipment. Very nice people, but their affiliations are with some of the major shows, and I start seeing a trend with them, even where they're starting to just make and sell some of this stuff that is being pimped out on these TV shows, and they really aren't designing them to collaborate and collect data. And that's the number one thing is, I don't want to design a piece of equipment or be a part of a design of a piece of equipment that doesn't capture, things and measure the frequencies that they're coming in on, because that would be what I'm wanting to look at. And that's what people should be looking at if they're really trying to come across as a science-based, right? Nonprofit or paranormal group or ghost hunting outfit, whatever they call themselves. If they're using technology at their disposal, I want this to be something that they would want to jump in on and be a part of. But most people are just biting what's being thrown out there on the TV shows, and none of that actually is being, measured and examined at that level.
It's a little like a Charlie Brown Christmas and the glitzy trees.
Right. Right.
To make an odd analogy. Well, I think like it's the how, like we talked about the obvious, right? And it supposedly works off certain frequencies and it translates that into words, right? We don't know what that formula is.
Exactly. And as I've said for years, I think it's very odd to me that somebody designed an ovulus to say when, this sensor's triggered and then that sensor's triggered. Again, these could all be different technologies that he's using. And if that's the case, great, kudos to you. But what I'm getting at is if this sensor's tripped and another sensor's tripped and they measure, this and that means the word murder. How do you come up with that? I know that, people like Frank Sumption, who designed the first Frank's box,
Right.
and people like Bill Chappell claim to have other. I don't want to paraphrase or anything, but basically, other entities or forces behind their knowledge.
Spirit-com.
Yeah, and I'm in the field. I'm in the field that is interested in that kind of phenomena. So that itself is something that I'd like to study, is your entities or your beings that you're speaking with, to get this information that tells you how to come up with those words in a device,
or improve the device. But I think with Frank's box and really any kind of a radio device, it's more on the entity to provide the words, rather than some kind of translation of EMF or some frequency. And, we're going to make up the code that means, get the
and
apps
that's
or whatever.
Yeah.
We have to take our bottom of the hour break, gentlemen.
Okay.
So if Ben, if you'd like to come back, we'd like to have you. We'll be right back after these important messages. Welcome back to Periscope Uncensored. My name is Jax, hosting for Clarissa, who's feeling under the weather. Tonight with me is Mr. Chris Carr.
Hey. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you for being here. And tonight we have a really special guest tonight, and I'm really happy that he's here. And Mr. Ben Robison. Welcome back, Ben.
Thank you very much.
So this equipment that could be coming. I mean, you said earlier that it's in the process, it's ongoing, but you really don't have a ballpark figure, correct?
Well, there's no way to put money on it until you really get the right people lined up, and then they can give you quotes on parts or time and labor and things like that. Also, I'd like to be a part of that process with them, and nobody's opposed to that being the case. It's the part that I've run into with the folks that I've reached out to in the past, is that most of them don't have the time to be able to devote to designing something like this on the side. Their jobs are to make money right then and there, and so I've ran into that issue in the past. But I keep putting my feelers out there. I keep trying to network with folks and try to learn on my own. So as I learn, I'll hopefully help design pieces of it or be able to speak educatedly about it, and then start using this stuff. But until then, it's one of those things, and that's the hardest part is finding time for everybody to be able to work on this outside of their normal paying jobs.
Yeah, we're all pretty busy, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the 40-hour work week isn't even a reality for a lot of us anymore.
Right. But with regards to the documentary I'm working on, if we can talk about that a little bit, that'd be a fun one, I think, for folks to hear about.
To tell.
Okay. It was about, I think, 2 years ago, June of 2016, I think it was. I was having a bachelor party. Instead of having the typical bachelor party where I'm going to bar after bar or strip club after strip club, I decided I wanted to have it held at a beautiful and notoriously known place for being haunted. And I had come to know,
That's awesome.
yeah,
Just gonna throw
and
that out there.
I'd come to know the old Wheeler Hotel from the lovely owner herself, Katie Brown, and staying there was, just very comforting and very relaxing, and it's like you're home away from home. And I thought, what a really cool place to have a bachelor party. Also, be weird, but I'm different in that respect, so I had it there, and I invited 4 other gentlemen to join me, and those were Casey Goodwin, Neil McNeil, Michael White, and Jay Verberg. And during this time, it was brought up by Casey. It had kind of been a brainchild of his going on in the background for some time. And he had, wanted to work on a documentary that actually showcased a beautiful location that had a history of the paranormal, and to show it with respect, to show it in the respect that we would not be buying into all of what Hollywood is constantly selling and throwing in our faces. Everything that is related to the paranormal is scary. We didn't want that. So we wanted to give an honest depiction of that location and our work. And during that time, that bachelor party, we kind of said, let's move forward with it. But it's taken time. All documentaries take lots of time, and so we've been filming different aspects of it from within the first year of concept to now. We're still filming.
That sounds interesting. When do you expect the docu to be finished?
We're hoping later next year, the latter part of the year, I guess, is what we're aiming for. And as long as everything stays on track and continues as planned, we're hoping for a 2019 release. But the old Wheeler Hotel is a really neat place just in its own, because it's got a lot of different history. It's been a lot of different things. And so we're trying to cover all that, especially from a historical aspect, and that's more Jay Verberg's department. But there's so much rich history with the location and the building itself. That part takes time too. So that's all been kind of a part of the process with this project.
Yeah, I mean, especially, the history and everything. That's all part of the investigation, and that shouldn't go into everything. Yeah, I agree with you. I got
Will that be a DVD or a digital release?
Thank you.
We're still trying to figure out what formats we're gonna do. I know for sure digital release, but it's possible that we'll burn some, have some DVDs made up. But that's kind of out there in the end goal as far as that goes. But we're already on IMDb. But we're hoping to be able to branch out and put it on several different streaming services out there.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's been kind of a learning curve for us as well, because none of us are filmmakers. We kind of took this project on, and I really have to give my hats off to the gentlemen that I work with. They've really jumped in and really learned a lot of this stuff, especially Jay and Casey. They've both had to learn how to operate cameras and tweak them and tune them in just, the way we need them for the proper lighting. Then there's the sound and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny because you do all this stuff, you're learning all this stuff, and you're trying to put it in practice. But you're also trying to keep your mind on the feel, of the documentary that we want.
Sure.
And those dynamics that we're aiming for.
To convey the intent that you wanted to convey, but then you have all these technicalities that crop up because nobody's done it before, right?
Right.
It's like you have to learn.
Not
things
easy.
on the go.
Yeah, it's not easy being Steven Spielberg. That's for sure. Trying to make a movie and have it give the right effect. And what I mean by that is, you're not going to hear scary sequences in the movie. You're not going to hear people screaming and running out of rooms. You're not going to, see provocation like you see on TV. We're very analytical, critical in everything that we do, even down to the way the feel of this movie, the documentary itself, is going to come across to the viewer.
Right on. Well, it's been great talking to you, Ben.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Our listeners grab the S.E.R.M theory, because I think it's interesting as hell. What do you think, Jax?
Yes, I think it's very interesting.
And if I may, real quick, I'd love to plug the website and the Facebook page real quick.
Absolutely, plug away.
Absolutely, go right ahead.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. So it is called The Permanence, a paranormal case study, and you can follow our progress on Facebook.com/The Permanence Film. So that's The Permanence as a plural word, film. And then the website itself is thepermanencefilm.com.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Well, Ben, we'd love to have you back, and so we can discuss the progress of the S.E.R.M hypothesis and the docu and everything else that's going on. You've been a great guest, and we love having you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to sit down and chat with you guys, and I'm glad that Clarissa was able to jump in for a moment and say hi, and I hope she feels better soon.
Right on.
Great.
Right on.
Thank you, Ben.
Would love to see how that device comes together.
Me too.
As we make progress. If you keep us in that loop, I'd appreciate it, because it's a personal interest to me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your interest. So, yeah, and I will definitely let you guys know for sure.
Awesome.
Great. Well, you have a good night, Ben.
All right, you too.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, Ben.
Bye-bye. Yep, bye.
Wow.
Oh, that's really cool. That was interesting, right?
That was amazing. That was like a lot of information.
It's more than like an all-in-one tool, but to simplify it, I think we are talking about an all-in-one tools, like something that can measure everything, any kind of trigger on that electromagnetic wave, is going to activate something, and not something that is, encoded in the programmer's vision of what that means, aka get the axe, and give us some kind of feedback, some more feedback, some more data to analyze.
Yes,
More validation.
Yes, and that falls in the line of, us being as investigators, and where stuff is we're always on a learning curve with new stuff coming out. I mean, this could be a huge game changer.
Exactly, a real game changer. You're well put. I think so. I've had these thoughts. I've looked into some of the light spectrum things, and it does get a little hairy, and like the telescopes get really big. Like NASA wants to, make those telescopes smaller, and they're having a hard time. So we're not going to see necessarily Bill Chappell come out with a gamma ray photograph maker, for $100. But
Right.
The technology does move along, and I mean, things get smaller. I mean, think about where we were 20 years ago, and that's something Elon Musk talks about a lot, and why he thinks AI is going to, eventually overtake us as a civilization. Look at where we were 20, 40 years ago, and where technology has gotten to today. It is awe-inspiring, and machines are for sure getting smarter.
Yes. Well, I am, for one, really looking forward to seeing the outcome of the S.E.R.M hypothesis and the docu that they're working on.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting.
And hopefully we'll all be using some of that equipment.
What do you got going on next week, Jax?
As far as me personally?
No, I mean on the show. I think you have another guest, and it looks to be a pretty kick-ass show, if I understand correctly.
I am unable to see any chat for some reason, and I can't figure it out.
All right. No worries. I'll say it. You guys got Christopher Balzano on next week, and he's the author of many fantastic paranormal books, some of which I know focus on our local area of the Freetown Forest.
Yes.
I've read a few of those books, and I think Clarissa wrote an introduction or something in one of those books. I know Chris has written in an introduction in one of hers as well. He's a well-respected guy from our area, and just a fountain of information. So that should be really cool. I know I'll be listening in.
Yes, and if I'm not mistaken, Chris is also the author of the Bridgewater Triangle, which is right in the neck of, like, my backyard, literally.
Right. We are in the Bridgewater Triangle, although I am no longer in the Bridgewater Triangle. I have left the Triangle.
You have left the Triangle.
I grew up in the Triangle, and I'm more than familiar with it. And what's kind of interesting for me, from my standpoint, is like, I got to see if it's different when I get out, because I'm used to the paranormal activity, and I consider paranormal activity just the day-to-day event in some way, shape, or form.
And where you were right.
A great show.
Yes, and right where you were right in the middle of the heart of the Triangle.
Oh, heck yeah. I was about 3 blocks from Lizzie Borden's residence. So
Chris has left the building.
More or less. I've left the Triangle.
Left the Triangle, yes.
Never want to leave a Triangle. So, yeah, we'll see how things are out here. I'm a little bit more in the mountainous region of Massachusetts, but not quite the Berkshires. It's beautiful. There is some beautiful old cemeteries out here. I do see that these towns around here were founded in the 1600s for the most part. So I'm sure there's some interesting history and some interesting ghost stories to be told.
Yes. If you find any interesting places to go, let me
Well, I'm
know
still
so we
looking.
can
I've only
go
been
do
here
it.
a week, settling in, but
Yes.
I certainly got my eyes open, as always.
That'll be interesting to investigate in another part of the state.
Well, I'm actually a lot closer to, say, like S.K. Gardner. You know, our S.K. Pierce in Gardner, Massachusetts, is a much shorter drive from here. S.K. Gardner. Yeah, okay. You know, we definitely have some history out here, and it is beautiful. It's beautiful country, so I'm looking forward to learning and exploring what's available.
Yeah.
But you guys, you got Chris Balzano next week. That's going to be awesome.
Yes. Yep.
I remember reading.
It's going to be awesome because you never know what's going to happen when Balzano and I are on the air together.
Oh yeah, you guys have a tendency to kind of duke it out, right?
Just
out of mutual respect, but
out of mutual respect.
Still some duking, some boxing gloves are going to go on.
Yeah, I don't know. Things may start flying. I don't know. You never know when it comes to Balzano and I. And yes, to answer your question, Chris, I have been a featured contributor in a couple of his books, and he has written the foreword to one of my books. So there's a lot of mutual respect, but we don't always see eye to eye.
Ding, 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 ding.
No, nobody is drinking tonight. But on that note, boys, we're out of time, but I want to thank you both for doing such a great job in my absence. Even though I was on the call, I was just muted the whole time. And Chris, thank you for filling in on your birthday. You could have been doing so many other things instead of playing with Jax on the radio. So thank you.
On a Monday, probably not, but that's okay. This was great. I'm glad I got to do this. And
it's your birthday. You could have been partying.
Yeah. So. I think Krampus night was enough last night on Hidden World, so I'm good. But I hope you feel better.
Thank you.
I hope you got some antibiotics today.
They did put me on antibiotics today, so I should start feeling better in about 24 hours or less. Knock on wood.
Fantastic.
So, but we're out of time, guys. So, but I want to thank you again for a great show. And yes, we're going to have Mr. Ben Robison back on.
Yeah, great stuff.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Glad to talk to you guys. Thanks a lot.
Okay, Jax, take her home.
Okay, on behalf of myself, Clarissa, Chris, Katie, Daryl, and the rest of the LNM Radio Network, thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Stay spooky, everybody.